My name is Alana, I'm 31 and my hands were thrilling with rage as my sister smiled across the table. The clinking of silverware, the low hum of Christmas carols, the glow of red and gold lights. Everything should have felt warm. Instead the laughter burned. The garage is ready for you, Mom said, not even looking at me, her voice carrying the same tone she used when asking someone to take out the trash. Laughter erupted. My sister leaned back in her chair, smirking while her diamond earrings caught the light. Better than the basement this year, she added, raising her glass of champagne. I kept my smile flat, my fork tracing circles against the porcelain plate. I wanted to scream, but silence felt louder. No one noticed my nails digging into my palm under the table, the crescent marks blooming red. No one noticed the way Dad cleared his throat, like he wanted to speak but didn't dare cross Mom's script. Christmas was supposed to be forgiveness, wasn't it? But in our house it was a theater stage and I was always cast as the failure. You still wear that perfume? My aunt blurted suddenly from across the table, sniffing the air. Her words cut through, random, strange, but it yanked everyone's eyes toward me. I nodded politely even as my heart thundered. They thought they knew me. They thought they'd buried me under years of mockery. But I had been busy building in silence. Have you ever had family cross your boundaries? Let me know in the comments. Because that night as I sat in the glow of twinkling lights, I realized silence was no longer my curse. It was my weapon. The turkey was carved, gravy steaming, wine poured into tall crystal glasses. But I could taste only metal in my mouth, bitter and sharp. My sister, Danielle, sat like she owned the room, her manicured hands fluttering as she told stories of her latest work trip to Paris. She worked for a man who thought he owned the world. A man who believed loyalty came only when bought. And when I walked into the showroom, even the clients gasped. Danielle laughed, her boss nodding beside her at the end of the table. As he was here. Invited into our family's home like royalty. His cufflinks glinted, his smile smug, his gaze scanning the table like he was already assessing what was worth investing in. My stomach knotted, but I kept my lips curved. The laughter rose again when Mom lifted her glass. To Danielle, she said, the pride of this family. Glasses clinked. My name was not spoken. I pushed a stray piece of potato around my plate, the fork dragging slow. Every sound, the scrape of knife, the pop of cork, echoed like thunder in my chest. Under the table my phone buzzed once. A notification. Then again. And again. A slow smile flickered across my lips before I buried it beneath my napkin. They thought I was forgotten, cornered in a garage. But I had been hiding something larger than their cruel jokes. Something they'd never imagined belonged to me. I looked across the table. Danielle's boss reached for his buzzing phone, irritation flashing in his eyes. That was the first spark. The beginning of unraveling. The vibration didn't stop. His phone kept buzzing on the table like a trapped bee rattling against the wood. At first he ignored it, but then, face tightening, he snatched it up. "Excuse me," he muttered, rising from his chair. The gold watch on his wrist caught the light as he walked toward the hallway. His voice echoed a beat later, clipped, confused. "What the hell is this?" Danielle shifted in her seat, pretending not to notice, but her eyes darted nervously to his disappearing figure. Her smile faltered for the first time that night. I lifted my glass, the stem cool between my fingers. No one saw the tremor of satisfaction running beneath my calm exterior. Because while they thought I was rotting in silence, I was building an empire. Quietly. Patiently. And tonight, the veil was lifting. My phone buzzed again under the napkin. Another update. Hundreds of messages were being pushed at once, spreading like wildfire. Screenshots. Contracts. Market moves. A storm, all with one name signed at the bottom. My Alana, Dad finally whispered so softly I almost thought I imagined it. His eyes were on me, searching, worried. He sensed something. I leaned back, forcing my voice steady. "Everything all right?" I asked Danielle, tilting my head just enough to watch her squirm. Her boss returned, face pale, jaw clenched, phone gripped like a weapon. He didn't sit. He just stood there, eyes flicking between Danielle and me. "Who the hell is AW Holdings?" he demanded. I set my glass down gently, the clink slicing through the silence. My initials. My shadow. My empire. The table froze. Forks hovered mid-air, steam curled off the mashed potatoes, and the only sound was the faint crackle of the fireplace. Danielle blinked, her smile twitching, faltering into something raw. What? She stammered, voice pitched too high. Her boss's glare sharpened. Don't play dumb. Half my clients just texted me. They're moving their accounts, every single one, to AW Holdings. Someone's undercutting us, someone with access. How long did you think you could keep this from me? He wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at me. The heat from the fire touched my cheek, but I felt cold. I folded my napkins slowly like I had all the time in the world. Maybe, I said lightly, you've been busy looking in the wrong direction. Aunt May dropped her spoon, the clatter jolting everyone. Mom's face hardened, confusion warring with denial. Alana, don't start. Tonight isn't about you. But it was. It always was. Every slight, every dismissal, every Christmas where they shoved me into corners like unwanted clutter. Tonight was mine. Danielle's boss stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the tablecloth. You, he breathed, realization dawning. You're the one. Danielle's hand shot out, gripping her wineglass so tightly her knuckles turned white. No, she hissed. No, you can't. But the buzzing started again. His phone. Then hers. A cascade of notifications lighting up their screens like fireworks. Numbers falling. Contracts pulled. Messages piling faster than they could swipe. I sat perfectly still, the faintest smile curving. The empire she bragged about, the one they celebrated her for, was already crumbling to dust. Danielle's boss staggered back, phone in hand, as if it had burned him. His face was pale, veins tracing white paths along his temples. This isn't possible, he muttered, fingers shaking. Isn't it? I leaned forward, elbows on the table, watching. I've been running quietly. Collecting, waiting. 5 years. Danielle's hand trembled over the wineglass. Alana, you can't. Yes, I can, I cut in, voice steady cold. And I did. The dining room felt smaller suddenly. The chandeliers threw fractured light over Mom's horrified expression. Aunt May's mouth opened and closed, speechless. Dad's hand pressed to his chest, heart thumping too fast, unsure whether to intervene. Under the table my phone buzzed again. Another update. A screenshot appeared, showing every major deal Danielle's boss had relied on being quietly transferred under my name. Clients, accounts, emails, everything. You've hijacked. His voice broke. I've reclaimed what you thought you owned, I said. Silence swelled in the room, heavy, almost sacred. Danielle slumped slightly, the mask of superiority slipping. I could see the fear in her eyes, the realization that she had never truly understood me. She had spent years showing off a borrowed crown, never noticing the quiet queen building in the shadows. I leaned back, picking at the napkin again, my smile ghost-like. The crackling fireplace mirrored the tension, shadows dancing along the walls. The night wasn't just mine. It was ours to remember. Or perhaps theirs to regret. Because finally the mask had fallen, and the truth had a voice. And it was mine. The room had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that presses into your chest and makes every breath deliberate. Danielle's boss finally spoke, voice trembling. You're bankrupting me. All my contacts, my deals, gone. Just like that. I traced the rim of my glass slowly, letting the weight of each word hang. Not gone. Redirected, I said softly. To me. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide. Alana, how could you? How could I? I echoed, voice low. You raised me to be invisible. To stay small. And I was patient. You all underestimated me. Always. Danielle's lips quivered, the first real crack of humanity in her perfect facade. 5 years. All that time, you were plotting? Not plotting, I corrected. Growing. Burning. Waiting. Every deal, every move, every moment of humiliation. It built something you never saw coming. Her boss stared at me like I was a storm in human form. You can't, you're not allowed. I am, I said. My phone buzzed lightly under the table, another wave of notifications confirming my hold on the empire. Aunt May leaned forward, whispering to Mom, she's unstoppable. The firelight flickered across Danielle's face, highlighting a flash of fear, shame, disbelief. The mask she wore for years was shattered, fragments of pride scattering like broken glass. Me. I finally let myself exhale. The weight I had carried, the humiliation, the erasure, the family theater, lifted fraction by fraction. Tonight the holiday lights didn't mock me. They bore witness. I realized then with startling clarity. Some silences weren't empty. They were weapons waiting to be wielded. Danielle slumped into her chair, fingers curling around the edge of the table, knuckles white. Her boss paced, muttering numbers, contracts, clients, all slipping through his fingers like sand. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. My first business journal. The one they had mocked me for, thinking it was nothing more than scribbles and daydreams. I opened it slowly, letting the pages fall naturally as if revealing a secret. Every move, I said, pointing to a page filled with calculations, contacts, and strategy notes. Every opportunity you ignored, every client you dismissed, they've been mapped. And tonight they've all come home. Danielle's face turned ashen. You can't just take everything. I already have, I replied. My voice was calm, almost tender, but the power behind it was undeniable. Mom's jaw slackened. Dad leaned back in his chair, a mix of awe and fear painted across his face. Aunt May whispered under her breath, "She outsmarted us all." The crackling fire threw fractured shadows across the room, dancing over Danielle's collapsed posture, her boss's pale, panicked expression. I set the notebook down, the subtle thud echoing in the silence. I never needed to yell. I never needed to crash doors. I built something that speaks louder than your laughter ever could. For the first time in years, I felt the freedom of clarity, the quiet satisfaction of justice, served cold, precise, and entirely mine. They had underestimated me for a lifetime. And finally they were learning the cost of that mistake. And as the last notification lit up their phones, I let the room absorb the truth. Some power is invisible until it decides to strike. The room was still. Danielle sat slumped, head in her hands. Her boss stared blankly at the table, his empire crumbling beneath the weight of my silence-turned strategy. Mom and Dad watched, faces pale, as if realizing that the child they'd overlooked had outgrown their world. I rose slowly, feeling the quiet authority I'd earned. My leather-bound notebook was tucked under my arm, a symbol of patience, planning, and precision. I placed it gently on the table. "This isn't about revenge," I said. "It's about accountability." Danielle lifted her head, tears streaking her cheeks, voice shaky. "Alana, I'm sorry. I never understood." Her apology hung in the air, awkward and incomplete but real. Her boss finally spoke, admitting mistakes, acknowledging negligence, promising reparations. Contracts were rewritten, financial boundaries restored. Justice wasn't loud, it was meticulous. Mom reached out, hesitated, then touched my arm. No words, just a quiet acknowledgement of what had been ignored for far too long. I nodded slightly, letting the moment linger. I stepped toward the fireplace, watching the flames dance, my reflection fractured across the glass. 5 years of silence, of being underestimated, had transformed into clarity. My empire wasn't a weapon for destruction. It was proof that patience, planning, and resolve could speak louder than rage. Danielle wiped her eyes, voice breaking. "I hope I can learn from this. Truly learn." I smiled faintly, the faintest glimmer of forgiveness flickering in my chest. Justice had been served, not loudly, not violently, but undeniably. The fire crackled, the notifications ceased, and the room held its breath.